Mars and Uranus on Algol. Simultaneously, Mars and Uranus align in the weeks between the Cancer new moon and the second Capricorn full moon on July 21st, on Fixed Star Algol, the demon star, the Gorgon Medusa's head. This is the energy of losing one's head, which you are cautioned against during this time. Let's explore Fixed Star Algol, and then I'll dive into the archetypal energies of Mars closing in on Uranus, both in their signs of debilitation, Algol and the myth of Medusa. Algol is situated on the Perseus constellation, which is located in the zodiac of Taurus. This notorious demon star is said to represent the center of Medusa's head, or third eye, and is closely connected with curses, blindness, both literal and metaphorical, and her mythology. I feel a special connection to this myth, as it was one of my favorites growing up. You might have sensed my ability to take a topic and research it obsessively. I do have my Gemini moon in the 8th house, after all, with Mars nearby in conjunction pulling it, but in the 9th house, pulling it into the positivity of the 9th house. This gives me a strong Scorpio flavor to my energy. Additionally, I'm of the Pluto in Scorpio generation, with Pluto in rulership in Scorpio. If you're a millennial, hate to break it to you, but you are a Scorpio, no matter when your sun sign falls. We're the first generation to need work that's aligned with soul purpose, and we're carrying the torch for the younger generations. Beginning in the 4th grade, at around age 9-10, I became obsessed with Greek mythology. From 4th through 7th grades, I used the original Clash of the Titans movie, which tells the story of Perseus, Andromeda, Pegasus, and Medusa. Later, my dad and I would watch this movie. Literally, my dad and I would watch this movie all the time, and it continues to be quite nostalgic for me. As a little girl, I had a head full of curly hair, and I used to run screaming bloody, I don't think I can say this word, so I'm going to say red rum instead, whenever my mom came to comb me. So she would call me Medusa. I've even played the role of Medusa for Halloween. In Greek mythology, Medusa was a gorgon, whose curly head of hair was made of snakes. She was fabled to be a terrifying, monstrous sight. Anyone who laid eyes on her was literally petrified and turned to stone. However, after Perseus severs Medusa's head, it becomes a powerful weapon in battle, capable of defeating the Kraken. Medusa wasn't always a monster, though. Her journey actually began as an oracle goddess with outstanding beauty, and she was turned into a gorgon by the jealous partner of Ares, Mars, goddess of war, Pallas Athena. After defeating the Kraken, Perseus gave the head to Athena to use in battle. Now, I do not condone in fear-mongering, but Algol is not something to take lightly. The last eclipse we had on Algol on November 19th, 2021, brought record deaths, thousands that week, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Algol is often referred to as the eye of the demon, and it has a nefarious tie to evil, pain, suffering, death, addiction, intoxication, and tragedy. Algol represents violence, death, misfortune, alcoholism, addiction, mental illness, but it can also represent power and immense wealth potential. Algol is often highly aspected in the charts of entrepreneurs and radical artists. Both Picasso and Princess Diana had Algol featured heavily in their charts. Once we learn to work with the intense energy, we can harness it and use it to accomplish great success. Here are some of the positive, possible manifestations with Algol. Awakening into one's personal power and magnetism. Experiencing transformative experiences that help one to evolve into higher states of consciousness. Being divinely protected and able to protect or care for those that are in need, whether those are loved ones or underdogs. Great power may find you in this life. This is where willpower to choose light over shadow and good over evil comes into the equation. Bringing unorthodox or revolutionary ideas into the world. Keeping one's mental health and or any repetitive or obsessive thoughts in check. Losing one's mind can be a metaphorical decapitation. When Mars aligns with Uranus, it presents a seeding moment for the future. In a fixed sign, especially when where both planets are debilitated or experiencing weakened expression, the shift is through our stubbornness. We may also be seeding a more sustainable approach to business as we reflect on the exchange of our energy and our efforts and the return or ROI on that. With Mars in the picture, there can also be a sexual transcendence through passionate intimacy. There may be sudden rushes of energy or breakthroughs and impulsive or rash actions. This is of the nature of both planets, especially when they are conjoined. Electric yang energy and sudden releases of energy. There may be sudden eruptions of anger and accidents. Watch for being easily driven to anger or triggered. This is essentially a battle cry that can release stuck or pent-up energy that's needed to defy the status quo when channeled correctly. Uranus activating Algol by conjunction can mean the cost of living leading to frustration, protests, and boycotts as we realize the power we have in where we choose to spend our money and do our banking. Taurus. On Thursday, July 12th, Mars and Uranus come within conjunction territory, exacting on July 15th and lasting through July 18th. The exact alignment occurs between 1:49 and 4:23 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, just prior to the break of dawn over Philadelphia, the nation's first capital and my hometown, making Philadelphia and the USA a powerful potential hotspot over the next few years for war and disaster. The exact alignment of Mars and Uranus can be visible with a pair of binoculars, should you be interested in getting up early enough to see it. Before Mars can conjoin Uranus exactly, Mars must first cover the territory where Jupiter and Uranus aligned back at the end of April, activating the energy and inspiring us into action come mid-July, just after Mars and Uranus align on Algol and the corresponding final Capricorn full moon of 2024. At the time of the second Capricorn full moon, Mars will prepare to leave its sign of debilitation, Taurus, for Gemini, bringing a fierce desire to communicate and create from the heart just in time for Leo season 2024. Happy Mars return for all of you who have Mars in Taurus or Mars in Gemini. If you have your Mars in Taurus, feel free to comment below how this is affecting you. It would also be important to note that this is happening exactly halfway between the new and full moon during what's called the first quarter moon. That is an opportunity to make pivots and act on what we're planting. I wouldn't act now. I would wait until Mars. Right now, Mars in Taurus experiences delays, obstacles, and frustration, so I wouldn't push too hard through that energy. I would just sit back and try to work through it very slowly and with a lot of grace. But as Mars gets closer to Gemini, you can start to make pivots to the goals and intentions that you're setting under the Cancer new moon with those sudden changes going on around you. It'll make more sense at that time. The alignment of two great malefics, Mars and Uranus, with Mars delivering karma via separation, injury, illness, and accident, and Uranus delivering karma via sudden changes and events, can be incredibly disruptive and explosive energy, especially in shadow. It happens once but every 2 years and usually involves taking a stand or fighting for something that we believe in. It can instill a strong urge to break free from what limits or restricts. On a conscious level, it's the energy needed to question, challenge, and ultimately disrupt the status quo. It can bring the loss of a father or brother due to some tragic event, so be very careful. In the sign of Taurus, it can indicate social or economic disaster leading to competition for control and access to resources, including food, water, oil, gas, and money. Mars in Taurus experiences delays and frustrations, and it really needs rest. So I advise you plant some roots. Enjoy a staycation. Taurus rules the throat and the throat chakra, so you're advised to say less, not more, and avoid wasting energy over explaining because it'll just be misunderstood anyway. Watch what you're voicing and putting out there. It can be very easy to be misunderstood and misinterpreted, so be mindful of your words, especially with Mercury in Leo, where what we say tends to be not only noticed, but remembered forever. Mars in Taurus in shadow is obsessed with money and has a tendency to use it to control and manipulate others. So there may be a feeling of this on a collective level, Work with the energy, not against it. Under this alignment, powerful leaders have the potential to fall from grace due to greed and egotism as their past sins, deceit, lies, manipulation, fraudulent activity come to light. This is especially true for individuals with prominent personal placements in harsh aspect to Algol, by conjunction, opposition, or square. We may be receiving mixed or confusing messages at the hands of politicians who say one thing, yet do another when we're not watching. Historically speaking, the August 17, 1945 alignment of Mars and Uranus, which was also in Taurus, coincided with the bomb droppings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The 2002 alignment of Mars and Uranus coincided with the UK foot and mouth epidemic, and the Mars-Uranus alignment of the early 1960s coincided with higher than average occurrence of solar flare activity. More on that in a bit. These are just a few examples. Through consciousness, we can work with the energy, and guiding the collective through this task is precisely why I started this YouTube channel in the first place, by translating the language of the archetypal symbolism of the stars. This energy is ultimately about cutting something toxic or monstrous out of our lives. Usually, just as Perseus severs off the head of the Gorgon monster Medusa, I'm being cautious and creative with my words here so that the YouTube algorithm doesn't censor me for using any banned buzzwords. We're cutting ties with a toxic or monstrous influence. This could be an actual monster, like a sociopathic or narcissistic partner, or a metaphysical monster, such as addiction or poor self-discipline. We must ruthlessly and unapologetically remove that influence from our lives, because just on the other side of that decision is an explosive transformation and the potential to tap into wealth and power. Algol is a star of great wealth, and once we learn to harness its energy, we can tap into its powers and full potential. You do have free will, after all. For example, President Joe Biden has Algol heavily aspected in his chart. So does Donald Trump. President Biden was born with his natal Sun, Venus, and Mercury directly opposite Fixed Star Algol, therefore activated by opposition, a challenging position. Is it any wonder that this man and his family are coming into their karma after a lifetime of deceit and corruption? I think not. I feel bad for the guy in his current state, but I do believe he has earned his karma. I predicted this prior to witnessing the abysmal debate, and sometime around mid-July, or around July 15th, something bad may happen to this man that removes him from the presidential running. The political party he supports is facing some harsh truths that they may very well lose this election unless they replace him with another candidate, and they do so quickly. Additionally, Joe Biden is of the Pluto in Leo, baby boomer, the greatest American generation we have seen in some time. Pluto in Aquarius, directly opposite, marks the time in one's life when our time here on this 3D Earth is over. The exact Pluto opposition will occur for him in 2026 through 2028. Donald Trump also has Algol conjunct his midheaven, the part of his chart ruling his public reputation and career. This means that the highest part of his chart is within 1 degree of Algol, very visible part of his chart. Comment below what you think this could mean. I'm curious. This places Algol directly opposite his IC, or his nadir, the true, most private self, which would be activated by opposition to Algol. His Mars, the lifeblood of a masculine, located 26 degrees Leo, forms an exact challenging square to Algol. Mars is rising with his ascendant in his 12th house. It is absolutely where his fiery Aries arrogance emerges quite visibly in his personality. This formation is called a fixed T-square, and if we factor in his descendant falling exactly 26 degrees Aquarius, it makes this a grand fixed cross. This chart placement is equal parts challenging as it is powerful. One of the major downsides is the concentration of fixed energies makes it very difficult for a person with this placement or chart pattern to change or adapt. Reactions at this time can be disproportionate to the events that triggered them, so we must not allow the shadow to consume us or allow us to lose our minds. Avoid giving into overconsumption and impulsiveness driven by passion. Now, I have to say before I move on, I try to keep it not political on this page. You probably can't tell how I feel about either one of those candidates from what I just shared with you. I will share with you I was once a member of the Democratic Party, and in the year 2021, I changed parties. I'll keep that a secret for now. And just because I changed parties doesn't mean I'm voting for that party, by the way. Mars experiences weakened expression in Taurus, and so does Uranus. This is because Mars is the traditional ruler of the sign directly opposite Taurus, Scorpio. And because Uranus, the sign ruling Aquarius energy and sudden change, is particularly uncomfortable in Taurus, a fixed earth sign known for its stubborn resistance to change. What are the perpetual cycles in our life when it comes to budgeting, eating, housing, needing instant gratification to elicit a feeling? Taurus is a very sensory-based sign that relates to the world in a practical way through its 5 senses and related sensory organs, and relating interpersonally. There may be instability in our relationships as they fall apart. There may be a collective lack of empathy or understanding, so don't go seeking it externally. A weakened Uranus contributes to a collective feeling of powerlessness, but don't fall for the illusion. You are far more powerful than you realize and think. On a global scale, we're witnessing heightened rivalry, competition, and paranoia with various countries in bidding wars over control of resources. The pairing of Mars-Uranus has ties to technology, electricity, and power grids. This can bring up issues of speed and volatility to said power grids, and even water treatment plants, etc. We may see hacking efforts that affect these vulnerable networks and systems. Protect your accounts and personal data at this time because it may be quite vulnerable. There is a very real chance that some major event, such as a cyber attack or major solar flare or coronal mass ejection, that could affect our dependency on electricity and power grids. There could also be revisits of AI and technology that's been released over the past 2 years, such as a reversal of a reliance on self-checkout over human cashiers. Uranus rules things like electricity and has ties to Pluto and Aquarius as the modern ruler of Aquarius energy. Breakthroughs and innovation in technology and increased cost in the electricity sector. Volatile power grids, increased likelihood of extreme weather events and natural disasters. Earthquakes, typhoons, hurricanes, cyclones, tornadoes, wildfire, and extreme heat. We are due for a record hurricane season with record high water temperatures in the Gulf Coast, a perfect breeding ground for intense storms. It can also bring an increased likelihood of explosions in the sky and space, and increased solar flare activity. In the days leading up to the new moon in Cancer, we had a lot of solar flare activity, which is of the nature of this Mars-Uranus conjunction. Pluto is in Aquarius for the first time since the French and American Revolutions, and both the 1960s and the French and American Revolutions marked time periods where record solar flare activity was recorded. Both time periods marked an era where people collectively band together to defy the status quo. Mars here adds the warrior archetype. This can lead to an increase of conflict involving the police, military, and large organizations such as the European Union and NATO. In the sign of Taurus, this can indicate volatility to banking and food, especially as we see an increased draw toward more controllable forms of banking, including digital currencies and a push toward more electronic wallets and banking. There could be a rise of a social media platform that becomes the dominant platform over the next decade. Drop in the comments which platform has your vote. Mine obviously goes to YouTube, currently the second most searched site after Google. LinkedIn is pretty dope too. 50% of internet users, it's probably more like 65% at this point, have a LinkedIn profile, which is why I do a lot of external marketing and networking groups over there. TikTok is favored by Generation Z and Alpha. Instagram is favored by millennials and older Generation Zers, while Gen X, older millennials, and savvy members of both the silent Pluto and Virgo generation and a sprinkling of boomers can be found dominating Facebook. One's marketing efforts all depend on your target audience, after all. In the sign of Taurus, we may also see banks crashing, continued high inflation, and a change to the value of the US dollar. We're already seeing it. On June 9th, 2024, Saudi Arabia ended the Petrodollar deal with the U.S., initiated 50 years prior on June 8, 1974, and they elected not to renew it. While the U.S. dollar was never backed by oil, if trading were to shift away and into a different currency, the effect could potentially dramatically reduce the demand for and resulting value of the American dollar. I guess time will tell. The effects of Mars in Taurus include experiencing slowed or delayed progress that brings frustration and depression. If you're feeling this way, you're not alone. Several of my clients have reached out expressing as such. Mars in Taurus wants rest. Remember to attract, don't chase. This is incredibly chaotic energy, so I recommend taking a break from caffeine and stimulants. You will not need them, and they may overwhelm and overstimulate your system, even in small amounts. On July 20th, Mars will enter Gemini, bringing fierce, determined communication, so we'll notice this inspired action taking off around the next full moon and in time for Leo season. Hi there, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. If you took anything away from this video or the New Moon in Cancer 2024 series thus far, I encourage you to check out these other videos. Please remember to like, comment, hit the notification bell, share the video with anyone you think might benefit from its content, and subscribe!